Chelsea, how are you doing?
I'm well. So good to see you.
Likewise, you look so well, especially early in the morning there.
Yes. Well, it's not so bad. It's 11 a.m. I'm an early riser on most days, so this feels like late afternoon. But no, it is still morning. It is
But you
11 a.m. in New York City.
but you look so well. I can't believe it's a little over a year. No, about I can't remember, about 18 months, I
Yeah,
think.
definitely over a year
Yeah.
because I thought about the first time I met you, which was the first time I had ever been to the UK, believe it or not. And so I had traveled before, but I had just never been to London yet or the UK in general. And I just remember how welcoming, how open arms you embraced me with. And so, yeah. And then we did that 2 years in a row with the Sweat Life Festival. And so, yeah, it was like in July. And so it's been a while since we've seen each other. So it's great to reconnect.
Indeed. And I got to take your amazing class as well, I remember.
Oh, yes. That was a
Yeah,
fun time.
it was indeed. So thank you for agreeing to be on the Nova Conversations today. So just can I ask you to introduce yourself for those that don't know you?
Sure. So I am Dr. Chelsea Jackson Roberts. I am a Peloton yoga and meditation teacher, instructor. I'm also a global ambassador for Lululemon, and I'm the founder of Yoga Literature and Art Camp for teen girls at Spelman College, Museum of Fine Art. And so that is me in a nutshell.
And there's so many different hats you're wearing there, Chelsea.
Yeah, and underneath it all is yoga, huh? Like that's the one uniting thread of it all, is yoga. And so, yeah.
Yeah, that's a really nice way of putting it because there's so many different hats we all wear. But as you say,
Mm-hmm.
yoga is the that runs is the core of it all.
Yes, yes,
Yeah,
absolutely. Oh my goodness, I have to shout out Team Chelsea over at Peloton. It's a whole community, just as you, Donna, embraced me when I came to the UK to teach.
yeah.
Team Chelsea embraced me as well, and so I can't help but to shout them out. So yes, so
Yeah,
happy to talk with you today.
yeah. And I'll shout out to my friend Yvonne. She said hi to you and I.
Oh, hi everybody.
Thank you for following us. So first and foremost, can you tell me how your yoga journey started?
Oh goodness, yes. I love to start with a good origin story. I love for the folks who are starting a yoga practice and just may think that it just is this love at first sight happens overnight. That wasn't necessarily my story.
Yeah,
The first time that I practiced yoga, I remember going to the first time I stepped into a yoga studio. It was a hot yoga class. I remember fainting and being totally, yes, I fainted in the class. All I remember were cold towels on my forehead and neck as I was coming back to life. And so I share that story because to see my journey and where I am now, in terms of providing yoga for so many different people, I want folks who are starting and may say, why does everybody just rave about yoga? And so I always like to start there. So I came to the practice a completely physical understanding of what yoga was. It was later in 2004 where I tragically lost one of my best friends and former roommates at Spelman College. She was murdered. And it was something that I had never experienced, that magnitude of loss, of suffering, of trauma on that scale before. And I remembered my yoga practice. It wasn't that I remembered that my yoga practice was this tool for healing. It was, I remember how I felt so connected whenever I practiced yoga. And so I decided to go deeper into my yoga practice and take a yoga teacher's training in 2007, where I learned about yoga and meditation. And so for me, I have to share that two-part journey to the practice, because a lot of people arrive to the mat because of the physical practice, which is great. And there's so much more to it. And so I was a school teacher while I was pursuing my yoga teacher's training. And so to be able to go to the classroom by day and then in the evening or on the weekend pursue my yoga teacher's training, that was an opportunity for me to begin to integrate exactly what I was learning on the mat in spaces that I had to call on the practice in order to feel and stay grounded. So that's my beginning. That's my origin story of yoga.
Yeah, and that's so cool, especially the first part of you fainting, Chelsea.
Okay. I was just like, oh, let me dust myself off here and get back to business. So, yes, it's a funny story now. At the time, I was like, what in the world just happened?
Yeah, that's funny because my very first hot yoga class, you know, my journey as well was a physical practice as well.
Mm-hmm.
I remember everyone talking about this hot yoga and this, and I thought, hot yoga, I don't need hot yoga. I can warm myself up from the inside.
Right.
So and then I would never travel across the river in London to go anywhere
Mm-hmm.
south of the river. And I remember a studio eventually opened up not far from me, and I thought I have to go. And I went up the night before with my girlfriend Chelsea, and as you can imagine, we drank a little bit too much. And I woke up. If I go to that studio, Chelsea, I would have fainted like you would have killed over from. I'd have
Oh,
killed over.
yeah. And that
Yeah.
was me walking in completely sober, hydrated and everything, and I still passed out.
Yeah, and I was able to go in the afternoon, Chelsea. So I went there, did everything wrong. I was hungover, and I went to the hottest part of the room, Chelsea. But I came out of there, Chelsea. I loved it. My alcohol, I was sober. I
Yeah.
sweated out, you know, and I
Yeah.
the way I felt, Chelsea. So, I've had a few fainters in the hot room, so I know.
Yes.
You for sharing that. You know, it just shows that we keep the yoga real. It's not all sunshine and light when we get on the mat, you know?
Oh no, I've had some serious cries out on the mat. I've had some serious anger bubble up on the mat. I've had a lot of different things come out, and which is why I know that we're chatting today, is that I started to see life and to, you know, interrogate the spaces where I was, especially with yoga, where I thought that I was supposed to feel so free and connected, and that wasn't necessarily always my experience.
Yeah, okay, thank you, Chelsea. Chelsea, what does yoga mean for you? You know, there's the word yoga and it means
Yeah.
for different people. So I'd love to know what you think and how it
Yeah. I
affects you.
always go to the foundation, the basics. By definition, yoga means to unite, to yoke, to join. And so yoga for me is that. Yoga reminds me that every part of me is connected and that I cannot decompartmentalize my experience. So my experience as a Black woman, my experience as an American, my experience as a, you know, a woman by itself, being female, like all of these things impact how I process and understand yoga. And so for me, it makes me more aware of who I am so that I can be more informed when I'm making decisions and how I connect with folks. And so, yeah, yoga reminds me that every single thing has impact and every single thing is connected. I'm connected with you, even though we're across the pond from each other, we are still connected. The folks who are on this call with us are connected. And so that's what yoga reminds me.
Yeah. And I think for me, yoga brought me back home to myself because I came to yoga.
Mm,
A friend of mine introduced it to me, but I became ill on that journey, and it was yoga that really helped me to ground me and navigate and become a teacher, which is something I never ever envisaged that I would do. It's like, you know, the universe or whatever had different plans for me, and here I am
yes.
talking to you right now. Thank you. So Chelsea, as you mentioned, being a Black woman, how
Hmm.
how being a Black woman in the yoga space, what has your journey been in terms of that? How has that affected you?
Yeah, so I think to contextualize everything, I am in the United States, born and raised. My family lineage is here in the United States. I mentioned Spelman College, which is a historically Black college for women, founded in 1881 during a time where Black folks were not allowed to go in predominantly white or white institutions, not predominantly white, white institutions, mainstream institutions. And so I know that that has informed how I understand my identity in these yoga spaces as well. My upbringing in Dayton, Ohio informs these experiences. And so when I think about what it means to be a Black woman in particular, I think that it is obvious that Black women here in the United States are definitely rising to the top when you think about our elections, when you think about the leadership. And so I see myself reflected in those spaces now, but it's not always that easy when it's in real time, when I'm going through these experiences. I think about how my power can sometimes be interpreted as being diminished, or just an add-on to the space, like if they're just like trying to check boxes. So those are the things that are always in the back of my mind, like, are they just trying to get a woman and a person of color and then a Black person at that? And so I know that this has been a journey for me to really embrace my womanhood and my Blackness through these yoga spaces. And I say that not to create division, because anytime I begin to talk about race, there may be some folks that think, well, why are we talking about race now? That is my experience. I cannot turn off, I cannot change clothes and not be presented as the person who I am and who I've grown to be. And so for me,
Yeah.
it's important to always acknowledge that there have been challenges being in this body. There have been challenges as a woman, as a Black woman, as a Black person. And it's no different when I walk into yoga spaces. And so when I'm a yoga teacher who's headlining a major yoga conference, when we were going outside and being in community with folks, I was oftentimes mistaken as, you know,
I think
the help, or as the person here. Can you hear me okay?
I'm
I can.
not quite sure the connection.
Hi, everyone. Donna. I can still. Hey, how about y'all
Chelsea.
out there? Can you still see us going? No? Okay.
Oh, it's paused, I think. Oh, I think I've lost you.
Yeah, so you were just asking me specifically about my experience with yoga as a Black woman, and it
Yeah.
has been a journey for sure. But
Yeah.
now I'm starting to see the progress in many ways in terms of normalizing who is considered the sitting in the seat of the teacher. And so my hope is that we continue, when we have conversations like this, that we continue a deeper understanding for the challenges that we're up against, that don't go away just because we're in yoga spaces.
Yeah, indeed. Because one of the issues, Chelsea, that I suppose you may be seeing as well, that the lack of acknowledgement about the lack of diversity in the
Mm-hmm.
yoga space, and you know the spiritual bypassing, the love and peace, and the I don't color treat the lack of diversity, or how you feel in a space like an injury. So if you can continue from there, sorry.
Sure, like an injury. And for me, the facts are is that, you know, not just in the United States, but across the world, there has been injury, whether it is due to racism, you know, all of the different structural and systemic ways that that, marginalizing people, how that has happened,
Yeah.
that's an injury. And so if I looked at that experience the same way that I look at my body when I step on the mat, I have to bring awareness to that injury. I have to bring mindfulness to those spaces that need a little bit more attention, as opposed to, just going in it like nothing has happened. And so for me, that's what I always like to share with yoga practitioners who may not directly experience racism, but just know that folks are. And that if we are truly in belief of this practice that is to bring union, then we have to apply it to the things and the places that even make us uncomfortable to chat about.
Yeah, no, thank you, Chelsea. And
Yeah.
can you speak to any experiences that you've gone through as a teacher in your time?
Sure, absolutely. I mean, well, and it's not just in the US. Like, I have had the opportunity with Lululemon as a global ambassador to be able to travel the world.
Mm.
And there have been experiences where I've directly experienced racism, whether it was traveling to get to the place where I'm supposed to be providing space for other people to feel safe and to breathe, or during, or even when I'm exiting the spaces. I think that it's important to vocalize in ways that are connecting. And sometimes folks do not want to hear your experiences or hear my experiences when it comes to racism. And I just don't stop. Like, I will not, allow that me to absorb the trauma and the pain of these experiences without sharing. If
Yeah.
there can be one more person that experiences the least amount of harm, then I want to contribute to that movement, and not allowing yoga spaces to be like beyond reproach of interrogating them. And
Yeah.
so, I mentioned when we were just on that there was a moment where I was going in, I was headlining a conference, and as I was going in, there was this assumption that I couldn't possibly be there to teach the class, that I was coming in to clean the room. So being mistaken as someone who is not, does not look like the typical master yoga teacher you usually see. There have been experiences where I've been slated to teach at spaces where they're advertising and advertising my class, and not seeing myself reflected in the advertisements. There have been times where people have just directly said things to me specifically about my race and being a teacher, or about my body and being a yoga teacher. And so I see that as I see the both and. I talk about that a lot, not the either or, but the both and. And
Yeah.
I see this as both as an opportunity for education and an opportunity to acknowledge that there's a lot of harm that has been done, so much that people don't even want to talk about it.
Yeah.
And so for me, yoga has been that tool that has always moved me beyond my comfort zone, by making me more aware of how I feel. That sometimes is the scariest thing for folks to interrogate how they're feeling in the moment. And
Yeah.
so if someone has called you out or called you in about something that they've experienced that has harmed them, and the first response is to deny that person's experience, then you're creating the disconnect right there, and that is not yoga. And so I just urge and encourage folks in those moments where it's just like, no, I don't want to talk about this. No, I don't see race. I don't see color, like all of these things, to interrogate and use that same yoga practice that you use to feel great and at peace, to interrogate why you have such an aversion to connecting with someone else's experience.
Yeah. And that makes you question what ahimsa means to them.
Mm-hmm.
Ahimsa,
Right.
ahimsa is
Yep.
non-violence, not only for yourself
Right.
but for others. And if you can't acknowledge everybody, then you have to question your yoga. And that's what I really
Absolutely.
believe. And no, thank you
Absolutely.
for sharing that, Chelsea. So Chelsea, what do you hope for the future of yoga in terms of, with all that's happened over the summer? you know, as you said, you've seen some changes that are happening, and we hope that they're, you know, they're going to be sustained changes, because we're seeing the same here. You know, every time we talk about race in the UK, they think, oh, we look to America, like you guys have got it worse. Yeah, type thing. It's almost like we can brush it to one side. But what change have you seen since, you know, the deaths that have occurred? You know, George Floyd and so many others.
Yeah, well, my hope for yoga is that we continue to use it as a tool to get deeper in how we are feeling, because I don't know how I'm supposed to understand other folks' experiences if I'm not honest with my own experiences. My yoga practice has supported me, and going back to my childhood, like where I have created a narrative that my experiences throughout my life has been, perfect up until I walked into adulthood, and that's when the bills started coming, and that's when hard times were here. But that is not the case. Like, this has been a process of accumulating these experiences in our bodies. And so my hope is that yoga is normalized, and more communities are able to have access to this very ancient practice that started thousands of years ago. Whether your entry point is from India or the continent of Africa, or wherever your entry point may be for yoga and its historical origins, we know that this is an ancient practice that has clearly been working. So why not apply it to these moments where we are in intense moments of separation? So why not use this practice, this tool that is specifically for reconnecting us, for getting us deeper in our feelings, for getting us to understand deeply how we're feeling? Why wouldn't we use it now? This is the time to use it now. And so my hope is that folks who think that they don't have the body type for yoga, or they don't have the resources for yoga, that they find opportunities or encounter, or those opportunities are shared for us to be able to see how yoga goes beyond just the asana, which is beautiful and one of my favorite parts of the practice, right? But it is so much more than that. You mentioned ahimsa. I think about Dr. Martin Luther King. To me, he was a yogi. When I think about these people who have been fighting for freedom or advocating for freedom,
Yeah.
they are yogis to me.
Yeah.
Different religious folks who have impacted, spirituality, they are yogis to me. Of nonviolence, how can we begin to repair as a result?